Hello and welcome to another reading vlog for February. So I have already read 2 books, let me tell you about them. We're starting with Sunbringer, which is a sequel to Godkiller. I rated Godkiller 4 stars, I've given Sunbringer 3. Basically in this world you have different types of gods. There are small gods and large gods, and they are kept alive by shrines and devotions and offerings by humans. You have god killers. The main character Kissen is one such person who fell into the line of business after her family was sacrificed to a god. She managed to live, the rest of her family burned. So since then, she has been killing gods, but she ended up coming across a random bunch of people. You've got a young girl with a god that sort of stays on her, and then a former knight who massacred a lot of people, and they team up for common and also different purposes. I can't tell you too much about plot, obviously, because it is the second in a series. However, I did rate this 3 stars. So the first book suffers from the same thing in that it takes forever to get into it. It is very slow paced until you finally get to some action, to some development plot-wise. This book, out of the 360 or so pages, it took like 250 pages to finally get going, to get some momentum, to get interesting, for pieces to start clicking together and shit to start happening. And that's just too long. The fact that it happened in the first one and then it's happened again, it's just, I also feel like this book probably could have been the end. This could have been a duology. I don't think that this needed to be stretched out to a trilogy. It did feel a bit like most of this book was filler, just trying to pad it out so that it could be a second book. The fact that it also had more than 4 POVs, I think there was 5 or 6 POVs, it's just too much for me. I feel like it kills pacing as well, because you're constantly being moved from place to place as well in the POVs, because the characters are not all together. So because they're also separated location-wise, it just feels like you go forward and then you go back to another person's POV, and then you go forward and then you go back because of the next person's POV. So it was just too many for me. The strengths of this book, though, are the world building. It is really fascinating. Obviously, gods themselves are not a unique subject matter. They have been in books for many years, but this author does it in a really interesting way. The types of gods that there are, how they interact with each other, what parts they're playing in the overall scheme of what's going on is fascinating. There was obviously some character reveals which were interesting, but I am very uncertain as to whether I want to continue. So I'd say in this book that there is meant to be a romance, but it's one of the most lackluster romances I have ever read. The main character is also bisexual and has a physical disability. So there is a lot of diverse rep in terms of ethnicities, sexuality, abilities, just wonderful representation in this. But yes, I don't know if I will continue on. The cover's gorgeous. The covers for these, like the artist they got, did a good job. Well done. But I had to push through a lot. And the only reason I pushed through is because I had pushed through the first time and then gotten a bit of a payoff. So I thought, okay, it's probably going to be the same sitch, and it was the same sitch. But I don't know, I'm just losing my fondness for the characters after this one. And I don't really care if I never find out. So I don't know, I might wait, see how the third one is rated, how long it is, what people are saying about it, before determining whether or not I actually read it. But yeah, this was a 3 star. It was very average for me. The next book I read was The Inheritance Game. So this one I listened to on audio. I'm not a big audio fan, but this was the fastest way for me to get this particular book because it is very popular. It is a YA book. I only read it because a friend of mine loved it and it got her back into reading. So I thought, at least if I read it, I can chat to her about it. If it wasn't for that, I would have DNF'd this at 2 hours in, because I was very clearly not for me. It is people comparing it to Knives Out, and I would say, please don't do that. That's not a fair comparison whatsoever. Knives Out is fantastic. I love that movie. This is not Knives Out. So this is a bunch of teenagers and it's all about puzzles, but really it's pretty much about the love triangles. I'm going to be completely frank with you here. That is the main focus of this book. You've got a poor girl, but she's smart, who all of a sudden is named the heir to this billion dollar fortune. This dude that died had 2 daughters and 4 grandsons. and they're trying to figure out why they've been disinherited and why he's given everything to her. And this dead old guy is known to be, really into puzzles. He really likes to mind fuck people, basically, just constantly playing games. So they're seeing this as one great puzzle to solve, and so is she. But if I was her, I wouldn't give a fuck. Like, basically the terms of the will state that if she lives in the manor, the house, for 1 year, everything is hers. So I'd be like, that's all I'm going to focus on doing. I don't care why this old dude picked me. I'm just going to say, thank you, sir, and take what I have been given and run with it, pretty much. But she's like, no, I need to figure it out. I need to find out what's going on. I'm like, please, as if you'd give a shit. You've got billions and billions of dollars now. Why do you care about solving why some old white guy picked you? But yeah, basically it's just about her crushing on the brothers and trying to figure out which one she wants more. And there's also a dead girl in the mix, like this girl that they all loved, and she's no replacement for her. And I'm like, ugh. It just, I don't know, the puzzles themselves too, they weren't that interesting or clever, and it just felt silly to me that these people are just going around playing games and trying to figure out why their grandfather was such a dick and didn't care about his own family. This is a series. I would have loved if this had just been one book and wrapped up, but no, of course not. Got to get that cash, son. So it is spread out. Am I going to continue on? No. Will I just ask my friend how it ends, just so I know? Yeah. But the twist at the end, if you're going to have, I find the best kind of twist did have some kind of nugget, some breadcrumb leading up to that moment, so that you could, in retrospect, be like, oh, wow, okay, that's how that got there. But this is just a kind of like if Scooby-Doo had a character and then they unmasked that character and that character wasn't in the episode the whole time, pretty much. And you're just like, of course you can make them the murderer, and we wouldn't have guessed it because they weren't there. They weren't around. They were never going to be a suspect because they weren't on the scene. So I'm getting distracted by my own booze. Perks of being bisexual. But yeah, this is a very teen book. Like I said, all about some hunky, rich white dudes, like so obnoxiously wealthy, and then a scrappy, kid from the block who's mega smart and is just trying to make it and save her sister from her abusive relationship. But yeah, it just didn't have any substance whatsoever for me. The writing was very basic, very simple. The characters were just not interesting. I didn't care about them. So yeah, for me, it's a 3-star. It's fine, but pretty unmemorable. And I will not be continuing on, as I said previously. So today I'm going to the library to grab some books, some new ones. Out of them, I think I'm going to start with Bridge, because that's one I've been waiting for a long time. I picked this based on the cover, but also I haven't read a sci-fi in a while, so I wanted to scratch that itch. I've gotten an audiobook because I do want to start going on hot girl walks. I guess that's the term for them now. I call them grandma walks because that's the pace that I go. And I pretty much just walk until my knees or hips hurt and head home. And the audiobook that's coming is Curious Tides. So this is YA, but it's fantasy YA. So pretty much that's the only kind of genre of YA that I do still sometimes read, because sometimes just the story and the world building is fantastic and I don't mind as much that the main characters are teens, as long as they're not having sex if they're under 18. I just don't want to read about 16-year-olds banging. That's not for me. And as long as they're not very heavily focused on a love triangle, for instance. Just not a fan of the love triangles. So I don't know anything about this book. It just says it's Ninth House meets A Deadly Education, and I have read neither of those, so I think there obviously must be an academia element to this, which is not generally my jam. I just really despised my time in school and university, so I like the idea of academia and the aesthetic is stunning, but the actual gist of going to class and listening to lecturers and doing work, it's not for me, bruh. Even though my former job as a librarian sort of fits that academia sort of shtick, but very different, I guess. It's post-academia. So we'll see how it goes. I just like to have an audiobook on hand in case I do have some sort of menial task, and I'll just have it on in the background. I'm also going to check out what they've got ebook-wise, because I want something else. I've seen that a lot of people have been getting their hands on a Tempest of Tea, which is something that definitely caught my eye, but I'm just going to have a browse and see what the new releases are and if they're available. But that's it's pretty much going to be just a random week this week and just I'll grab whatever the library's got. I don't really have anything lined up on the schedule per se. Today I'm going to the shopping center because my kids need things and I must get the things for them, and the library, yeah, and that's it. It's pretty much a very slow day, and then I have been getting quite a bit of reading done lately. It's just all I've wanted to do when I'm not working, taking care of the kids and doing housework. I've just been picking up books and I've been running through them. The library's been pretty good at keeping me stocked. I've got my book club coming up next week, so in a few days, and I will be going to the new one as well this month, trying the other evening book club to see if it's a different demographic and if it's different kind of books that they're recommending. So we'll also have to get the books for those as well. But I'll see you the next time that I read something. Okay, I'm back. I had my hair cut and I feel like it looks like Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. I don't like it. I'm gonna get it recut a lot shorter. But yeah, I'm just not feeling this haircut at all. So I went to the library. I've got Intentional Health, Detoxify, Nourish and Rejuvenate Your Body into Balance. Bridge, so this is that book that I was talking to you about, the sci-fi. It's a thick boy. I didn't realize it was so big, but I'll probably start with this one. Then I've got Cheeky for my daughter. So we'll see how we go with this one. I've got Trust Life, Trust Yourself, and Find Peace. Then I've got Infectious Generosity. So quite a few nonfiction books at the moment. So I'll definitely need to find some ebooks to supplement that with. Okay, so I decided to DNF Curious Tide. So this was an audiobook and I listened to 3 hours of it. And it was sort of centered around a tidal lunar kind of magic, but the magic system was so complex. It really dragged the whole book. You were just getting info dumped on, and I felt like it was just unnecessary to be that complicated. You've got the two main characters. The FMC is an absolute wet blanket of a character. Did not care for her. The MMC, he was fine. So they both share a deceased loved one, being the sister of the MMC and the best friend of the FMC. At the 3 hour mark, they didn't really cross paths, so their storylines were still quite separate. But I just found that I didn't care. I didn't care about the story. I wasn't invested in any of the characters, and it wasn't catching my interest, so I decided to DNF it. The next book I picked up was Bridge. So I like the other cover more than this one. Oh boy, so I've given this a 2.5 stars, guys. Yeah, it wasn't my kind of book. The writing style itself just wasn't my jam. I didn't really jive with it. But in this book, you've got a woman who is trying to find her mother. Her mother supposedly died, but she believes that wasn't her mother because this book is about the multiverse. So they use this dreamworm cocoon threads to jump into the bodies of alternate versions of themselves in different realities. And when they do that, them in the other world jumps into their body. You've also then got these like Agent Smith characters who are trying to kill the people that are jumping around, because when they jump into these alternate versions of themselves, these dreamworm eggs start growing in those people's bodies, and that's supposedly not a good thing. Why? I don't know. Like I said, this was just so utterly confusing. I didn't really understand it. It's very weird. The characters are a bit insufferable. You're not really rooting for any of them. The morality in this is not really existent. Like, consent is obviously not a thing. And whilst there were twists at the end, they didn't really warrant pushing through. The annoying thing about this is I had a mushroom trip yesterday, which I do once a year to sort of reset my brain and work through some stuff. And unfortunately, these dreamworms wormed their way into my trip and made me think about being more selective with the kind of content I consume, because you don't really know at the end of the day what is actually sort of getting stuck in your subconscious. And obviously these dreamworms did. But in terms of this book, it was a bit of a dud for me. Didn't really enjoy it. and there are much better books surrounding alternate universes or multiverses, you know, out there rather than this one. So the final book that I read to end the month of February is A Tempest of Tea. So this is like Peaky Blinders meets Six of Crows with vampires and coconuts. I'm not sure why they went with tea, because tea isn't really a big thing in the book. They probably should have called it A Chaos of Coconuts, because coconuts play a bigger part. But in this book, it's very reminiscent of Six of Crows. You basically got a team of heisters, and unfortunately you do get a POV for each of the characters. I'm not a big fan of that. Anything more than 3 POVs, I find it hard to read and I get confused, and I feel like it drags it a bit, because obviously too there'll be characters that you just don't like as much and then you have to have their POV. However, my favorite character in this book, Mateo, did we get a POV from him? No, we didn't. So I'm a bit salty about it. But Mateo is definitely my favorite. Do I picture him looking like this? Yes, I do. And I have to say that I have a very, very, very soft spot for aristocratic men that call you darling. It just revs my engine and I like it. So in the vein of honesty, the 4 stars is because of Mateo. Like in a book, if there is a character that I really love, I will persevere for that character. So the main reason that I will be continuing on in this series is because of Mateo. Now, this book also has a plot going on. Do I care about it much? No, I don't. There are vampires in this world. There is a lot of subterfuge. There are a lot of dealings. There are good guys and bad guys and grey guys. And I don't really care much for the plot. Like I wasn't invested. I didn't feel the high stakes of it. For some reason, overall, this book felt a bit silly, and I couldn't take it seriously. So, especially because the main character dyes her hair candy floss color, and she does that to detract from the color of her skin, so people notice her hair more than her skin. But it's hard for me to picture her as a killer when she has baby pink hair. I don't know why, but I just see people with baby pink hair and I think that they're cuties and they're little pixie fairies, and I want to love them and squeeze them, not run and cower from them. There is also a love triangle in this. However, one of the men it's very shocking and confusing when all of a sudden they turn him into a romantic suitor, because it just feels like it comes out of left field. I was like, where was the build-up? Where was the tension? Where was the angst? Where were any signs that this guy was a contender for this woman's heart? Like, where out of left field has he come? He's also just a very odd character in general, is in that he doesn't feel real. He feels very made up. And I'm just not sure what part he's playing in this and why he's a main player. I obviously much prefer the second romantic suitor, much prefer. There were twists in this that I didn't see, so I will give props for that. However, once again, the coconuts just feel so dumb. Like the whole reason of the coconuts, I just was like, okay, I see why they've picked the coconuts, because of this fact with science, but like, it's just very weird. I just laughed. I laughed at it. The cover is gorgeous though, and I will continue on with it, even though I'm, like I said, not particularly invested in the plot or the ragtag team of heist people. I am here for Mateo. Mateo is not part of the gang. He's a supplemental member, but I'm hoping in the next book he gets to join the crew, so there's more of him, but we shall see when that happens. But that was all of the books for the month of February. I will next see you for my February wrap up. Until next time, stay well, Star Child.